Ever wanted to cast Black Lotus? For 3 days, Magic the Gathering Online will let you play Vintage absolutely free. Welcome, possible Vintage gamers. I have exciting news for you. If you've never played Vintage before, you can play Vintage on Magic Online for free. So, this new series, MTGO Spellgrounds, is going to be a weekly project where MTGO will let you play a certain format for free for that week. I've worked with Daybreak Games to select 6 Vintage decks for you to play for free next week. So from Monday to Wednesday, so that'll be June 16th to 18th, you'll be able to play in this Spellgrounds event on MTGO. You'll get to pick up from 3 decks. It's going to take 3 of the 6 decks and give you a choice on which one you want to play through a 3-match league. And there is no pressure or prizes on the line. You can just sit there and learn how to play Vintage on MTGO absolutely free. No pressure at all. If you do want to play for small stakes, the Gauntlet event will actually run from Monday to Friday, where you can play this 2 entry fee tickets or 20 play points or a Gauntlet token for low stakes prizes here. So if you've ever wanted to play Magic online, or you've ever wanted to play Vintage, or ever you want to play both, this is the perfect opportunity for you to test out and see if playing Vintage on MTGO is something that you are interested in doing. So I am going to show you, 1, where to find these events on Magic Online, and 2, the sample deck list that you are likely to see next week. So let's go here. You'll be able to find the Spellgrounds event in the Constructed tab, or the Limited tab, I believe, in the Gauntlet section down here. So you have Constructed, so you're at their homepage, you go to Constructed, you go down to Gauntlet, and here there will be free Vintage Spellgrounds League. So right now this league is Pauper, because this week is Pauper, but next week will be Vintage. You have a couple days to play free Vintage on MTGO. You'll be able to hit join event. You can hit join, and what will it do is you can join the draft queue. Join draft queue is just going to show you 3 different decks to choose from. In this case, this is Pauper, so you can choose between Gruul, Jund Wildfire, or Mono Blue Terror. Let's just pick Mono Blue Terror. It'll put that into your inventory here, and then you will be able to play with this deck list. You can switch around the sideboard in the main if you want to, but I recommend just playing it as it is. These lists are curated by Vintage players as part of Daybreak's creator program. So a bunch of different Vintage players and content creators have looked at the decks and given feedback to make sure that they are viable. Obviously, this is the Pauper one, but you'll be able to play here, and you'll be able to play 3 matches with this deck. And I believe you should be able to enter and drop as many times as you want and play as many matches as you want. I don't see any reason why that couldn't be the case. You could always just drop from the league here and try again. So you can play for 3 days as much Vintage on MTGO as you want from among the curated deck lists in this Gauntlet. It's pretty exciting. It's really, really cool. And I'm going to show you which decks we have likely cooked up for you this week. I am filming this before deck lists have been locked in, so there may be some changes. I don't expect there to be, but I have to film this before I go off and play my tournament this weekend. So I will show you what decks you are likely to see in the Vintage MTGO Gauntlet for MTGO Spellgrounds. Dredge. The classic Bazaar of Baghdad deck. Dredge is a unique Vintage archetype. Yes, you might find Dredge decks in other formats, but you will not find Dredge in the same way in other formats as you would in Vintage. Number 1 thing you need to know about this deck is you have to mulligan to Bazaar of Baghdad. Bazaar of Baghdad is the key. Bazaar of Baghdad is a land that says tap, draw 2, discard 3. Your deck will basically not function unless you have this in your hand. So you're going to use Serum Powder to make sure you can mulligan all the way to a Bazaar in your opening hand. You are 99% likely to find a Bazaar using this mulligan strategy. And when you have your Bazaar, you can activate it, putting Dredgers into the yard, and then you will be able to change your draw steps into Dredge and use your graveyard instead of your library in your hand to win the match. You'll have lots of free interaction in the form of Force of Will, Force of Negation. Don't be too scared. This deck is fairly straightforward in how you play it, but you'll pick up things along the way. It's got a lot of depth to it. But I want to make sure that everybody knows if you're playing Dredge in Vintage, you need a mulligan to this Bazaar. If a graveyard deck isn't your fancy, how about a nice, fair, blue controlling tempo deck? Esper Luris Control is going to be the tempo deck of choice or the controlling deck of choice. Those terms are a little intertwined in Vintage for this gauntlet. This is one of the best decks in the format, very powerful, and it's going to reward you for your play in your history in other formats. It's going to be very similar to a legacy deck, a blue legacy deck, but we have a little bit powered up cards like Psychic Frog, now banned in Legacy, but you can play this in Vintage. It's worth noting Luris of the Dream Den is a companion for this deck, only really allowed to be at its best here in Vintage. All of your creatures and your artifacts can come back from your yard with your Luris. And you're going to basically control your opponent, remove their creatures with Swords to Plowshares, remove their lands with Wasteland, counter their spells with Negation and Force of Will, and attack with creatures. Good old-fashioned blue Magic the Gathering. If you're saying, Justin, I like attacking with creatures, but I don't want to play blue, then maybe Mono White Initiative is going to be your best choice. Mono White Initiative, a deck that was very powerful in Legacy to the point where pieces of it needed to be banned, is a fair attacking deck in Vintage that doesn't require blue. You're going to play lock pieces on turn 1 with fast mana like Archon of Emeria, an Anointed Peacekeeper, the new Clarion Conqueror, to make sure that your combo-oriented opponents can't do anything too powerful. And then you'll follow it up with the trademark initiative creatures, White Plume Adventurer and Seasoned Dungeoneer, to close out the game very quickly. When you're mulliganing with this deck, it's important to try to find a turn 1 play. So you're going to look for hands that contain Chrome Mox and other Moxen to make sure you can play your creatures ahead of curve. But there are other creature-based decks in the format, and some of them feature very, very powerful lands. Prison Shops might be a deck for you if you are interested in the non-blue deck that stops your opponent from being able to execute their game plan. This Prison Shops deck is going to be entirely based around the power of Mishra's Workshop. This Vintage-only land just taps and adds 3 mana. Slight restriction, you can only play artifacts with this 3 mana. So, we've got a deck full of artifacts. You're going to stop your opponent from doing things with Sphere Resistance, Null Rod, Thorn of Amethyst, Trinisphere, Vexing Bauble, and other locked pieces. And then you are going to step on the gas with Patchwork Automaton and Stonecoil Serpent to get you over the finish line. You have a tutoring land package with Golos Tireless Pilgrim, Band Commander Staple, and you can get things like Wasteland to destroy your opponent's land, Strip Mine. You can make a bunch of mana with Tolarian Academy, some Construct with Urza's Saga. You can get an Inventor's Fair, which lets you fetch up different pieces of artifacts in your deck. Maybe you want a Crucible Worlds to bring back your lands. You have lots of options here once you've slowed your opponents down with your restrictive prison pieces. If you are more interested in beating up on these creature strategies, maybe Oath of Druids is the deck for you. A Vintage staple, Oath of Druids has lasted many years in the Vintage format, as its ever-evolving creature suite allows you to cheat large creatures into play. As long as you have less creatures than your opponent, using Forbidden Orchard to give your opponent some creatures, you can cheat into play on your upkeep Atraxa Grand Unifier, one of the strongest creatures ever printed in all of Magic. If you don't have an Oath of Druids going, you can Show and Tell. Putting in your Atraxa Grand Unifier is very likely to be stronger than whatever your opponent could possibly play. And we're going to find all those pieces with the new and powerful Stock Up. This deck is a Vintage staple, a classic archetype, and one that you might enjoy in this gauntlet. Last and certainly not least, for the combo enjoyers, we have Luris Paradoxical Outcome. Paradoxical Outcome from Kaladesh is one of Vintage's most famous combo-oriented cards. You get to pick up your Moxen and put them back down, sometimes generating mana and drawing cards along the way, getting your storm count as high as possible before winning with a charge of Human Knights via 4th Air Lingas. There's an interesting pseudo draw package with Thunder Trap Trainer from Bloomburrow, Stock Up, and Flame of Anor. You get to play a combo controlled game plan and then win in spectacular fashion, taking way more game actions than your opponent. One of my favorite Vintage combo decks will be available for you to try in this gauntlet. I hope everyone is as excited as I am to invite new vintage players onto MTGO in this free Spellgrounds event starting on Monday, June 16th until Wednesday, June 18th. This gauntlet was a lot of fun to help Daybreak put together, and I hope you have a lot of fun playing it. Let me know in the comments if you end up playing this event or you're excited for this event. I will try to put a link to maybe an MTGO guide on how to get introduced into the client. And I hope to see you all battling next week. See you then.